ABC Listen. Podcasts, radio, news, music and more.
The debate over whether we should be allowing Palestinians from Gaza to come here has been getting pretty heated, to say the least. In part, it's turned into a row over what is and isn't racist. Opposition leader Peter Dutton says we need a ban because of a security risk. But are the 1,300 people who have managed to get here, and those wanting to come, really a danger? Today, Radio National Breakfast and the Party Room podcast host, Patricia Karvelas, on the policy and the politics. I'm Sam Hawley on Gadigal land in Sydney. This is ABC News Daily.
And we look at public polling in the Gaza Strip today, between 40 and 75% of people have a sympathy for the Hamas terrorist organisation.
These are normal families. These are families that you are seeking to paint that somehow they are all terrorists.
At the moment we've got a debate where he's wanting to go after Palestinians, but before that it was Africans, it was Lebanese, it was Muslims.
PK, immigration, it's such a vexed issue, isn't it? It's so political. And the tension, of course, really ramped up a notch when Peter Dutton took to his feet in Parliament on Thursday to bring on a debate about Palestinians fleeing to Australia. It was a motion on national security.
That's right. And it came after he answered a question in an interview on Sky News. And he made a point which seemed, and I think is, a really big departure from bipartisanship in so much as he talked about a blanket prohibition of people coming from that part of the world, Gaza, that war zone, into Australia.
I don't think people should be coming in from that war zone at all at the moment. It's not prudent to do so, and I think it puts our national security at risk.
You know, there was a moment where people thought, is that just a one-off remark? How are we going to see this really advance? And I think Peter Dutton at that point made a decision to really lean into it.
Mr Speaker, this is an egregious breach of what is in our country's best interests. This Prime Minister has one charge, the first and most important charge, to keep our country safe.
Peter Dutton stood up in the chamber to argue that Palestinians fleeing Gaza should not be granted entry to Australia because of national security fears. He said he didn't think people should be coming in from that war zone at all, and that's the key bit, at the moment. Said it's not prudent to do so and it puts our national security at risk.
All right, so PK, Peter Dutton, he moves this motion on the Parliament floor, a national security motion, and there are a number of MPs in the chamber who take great offence to what he's saying, including the independent MP Zali Steggall.
It's extremely concerning to see the opposition turn up today with this suspension of standing orders and the words and the rhetoric that we're hearing here.
That's right. Zali Steggall really made quite a lot of headlines when she stood up, and there was quite a moment on the parliamentary floor.
So what I'd like to share is the human story about some of the people we're talking about, the lives they're talking. And I would ask you to be silent. I have the floor.
Order.
She was making the point that it's very easy to dehumanise people who are seeking safety. So she's obviously very supportive of these people. That's her political view. And after continual interjections, she told the opposition leader, very spectacularly and controversially on the parliamentary floor in the lower house, to stop being racist.
We heard you in silence. You can hear me in silence.
Order.
Stop being racist.
Leader of the opposition. Order.
Now, that's not parliamentary language. She was asked to withdraw. She did withdraw the comment to assist the House, as is the language in Parliament. But since then, she spoke on RM Breakfast And I thought it was really interesting. She backed in her view.
I stand by this policy proposal is inherently racist, and it's designed to foster fear and hatred of a minority group.
And that has been, well, the latest chapter of this controversy.
Yes, absolutely. I see that Peter Dutton is considering taking legal action of some sort. I don't know if he'll do that or not. Anyway, PK, there was a build-up to this moment, wasn't there, this motion in the Parliament, including an interview that the ASIO head, Mike Burgess, gave on Insiders. Tell me about that.
It was a pretty pivotal interview and a really important interview. The ASIO boss, Mike Burgess, appeared on Insiders with David Spears, our colleague, and he said that if someone from Gaza just gave rhetorical support for Hamas, now Hamas is, of course, the government in Gaza, but is a listed terrorist organisation and, of course, is extremely militant and carried out the October 7 attacks, that they wouldn't be seen as necessarily being a threat to Australia, that you'd have to have an ideology or support for violent extremist ideology to be a problem.
Like if they're supportive because they want their homeland, if they're giving financial support or material aid, that can be a problem. And obviously we take each case on its merits in the context of the information we have before us.
But if it's just rhetorical support?
If it's just rhetorical support and they don't have an ideology or support for a violent extremism ideology, then that's not a problem.
Now, that clearly is at the centre of what the coalition is troubled by. He said there are security checks and he outlined some of those, although we don't know all of the detail, can I say, Sam, because ASIO is our spy group. They don't tell us every part of the way they do things. But that idea of rhetorical support has become really contentious. And the idea that everyone in that region supports Hamas is, of course, well, ludicrous. In fact, there are many people there who are incredibly oppressed by Hamas, and that's a whole other story that I feel is being undertold at the moment.
So Peter Dutton argues against what Mike Burgess is saying, really, because he's saying Hamas is a listed terrorist organisation. And he argues, imagine if the Howard government or the Morrison government had suggested that we bring sympathisers of Saddam Hussein here, or Al-Qaeda or ISIS. That's his argument.
Yeah, that's what he argues. But I suppose the big question is, have they been able to demonstrate that the people that have come in are supporters of Hamas? Now, I interviewed a woman who's a neurosurgeon who came to Australia on a visitor visa because she basically could. It's cost her a lot of money. Her brother lives in Australia. She's in Sydney. And her story, she's like, I'm not a political person. I don't support Hamas. That's not what I'm on about. I just want a safe life for my children, right? So the idea that because you are living somewhere that you are supportive of the regime is being highly contested, and I think rightly so.
It's not easy life for me and my children. I want to protect my children and want them to live as all children in the world, how they live in peace.
I seek to bring people together. This bloke can't ever say no to attempting to raise tension in our community.
The Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, he sees this as divisive politics by Peter Dutton and nothing more. And Tony Burke, he was pretty fired up in the House this week, saying that really the opposition is questioning ASIO in this debate.
He wants a public answer to this. What are the criteria for ASIO to carry out a security assessment? What are the criteria? So he wants everything that he may have been told in private briefings over a large proportion of his career, for that to now be something that becomes a public discussion on the floor of the House of Representatives.
The government is kind of firing back and defending the way that they've been handling this, and there's a reason they're doing that, right? Like, they are under pressure from the opposition. And as is said in politics, and I think is a really relevant thing to mention on your podcast, this is an issue that the coalition wants to talk about, but it's not in the government's interest to keep talking about this, right? And so the opposition has really been able to suck the government in to talk on their territory. This is their territory. They want to be banging on about this, visas and national security and its implication that the government is weak on it.
So, PK, let's unpack this notion then that we are less safe because the government has granted these visitor visas. Almost 3,000 visitor visas have been granted to individuals from the Gaza war zone, and about 1,300 of those people are actually here because, of course, the borders are now shut. So there was only a limited opportunity where people could get out. But by the way, 7,000 applications have been rejected. Peter Dutton says they didn't go through a vigorous vetting system. But is that actually true? Do we know that?
I don't think we know the full story on the exact vetting. What we do know is that ASIO has told us they're satisfied that when things have been referred to them, that they've gone through an adequate process, right? Now, the opposition has said that the fact that there haven't been face-to-face interviews with all these people is an issue. Now, Dutton says refugees should not be given visitor visas until biometric tests, face-to-face interviews and ASIO assessment can be conducted. Peter Dutton is comparing it with a scenario for these 12,000 Syrian refugees in 2017. He said those refugees were subjected to stricter vetting and that they were also processed in a third country. And that's really one of his attack lines, making that comparison. Now, the difference is those Syrians were applying for humanitarian visas, not visitor and tourist visas, which aren't as extensively vetted. That is a difference. Let's remember why these people have quickly tried to get these visitor visas. Obviously, it's because the situation just erupted so quickly. And they are people who are connected in Australia already through relatives and also have been able to pay their way out. And it's really important to mention that there are some processes, like they have to go via Egypt before they can even come to Australia. And there are checks. The Israeli military, we're not seeing them let Hamas militants or supporters willy-nilly get out of the country. So that's, there are some, I think, very good critiques of what Peter Dutton is saying based on the logic here.
The worry about these sort of debates, of course, PK, is about social cohesion and what sort of feelings these debates create among the wider community. This isn't dying down in any way. In fact, this is a debate that's heating up. There's dangers that come with these sort of debates, aren't there?
Well, one of the big arguments that the government has been making has been to quash the ASIO boss, Mike Burgess, who has talked about the language we all choose to use, including the media, putting the temperature down when we're talking about these issues. And so we've heard from Anthony Albanese and his ministers saying that Peter Dutton is dialing up the rhetoric and that he's not in line with what he's been warned not to do, not just him, can I say, he's not the only one being singled out, to be thoughtful about their language and not to ramp this up. Now, Peter Dutton's argument in response to critique is that he's talking about national security, that he's entitled to raise questions around national security, and he is entitled to ask questions. The big question is this a real danger to our national security or not? And at this stage, I don't think it's been demonstrated that our national security is at significant risk. And let's not forget there's a whole bunch of people in our country right now who are kind of in limbo. And they're real people and it's heartbreaking. There are the really big political questions, the security questions, and then there are real people in all of this.
Patricia Karvelas is the host of the Party Room podcast and Radio National Breakfast. This episode was produced by Sydney Peed, Cara Jensen McKinnon and Sam Dunn. Audio production by Anna John. Our supervising producer is David Cody. I'm Sam Hawley. Thanks for listening.